Mohammed bin Salman and Jeff Bezos, two powerful men now linked by a scandal. The Saudi Crown Prince is accused of hacking the phone of the American billionaire. And while the kingdom denies the allegations, an investigation has begun. What could it mean for bin Salman? And how vulnerable might anyone else be to such cyber attacks? This is Inside Story. Hello everyone, I'm Kamal Santamaria. So we have the world's richest man, we have one of the Middle East's most influential leaders, and a message between the two which will almost certainly change their relationship. The allegation is that Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon and the Washington Post, had his phone hacked by a WhatsApp message from the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. On its own, that could be worrying enough, but of course, the Post previously employed Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist whose murder by a Saudi hit squad has been widely linked to the Crown Prince. Now, the same UN players who investigated his killing want an investigation into whether the hack took place and if it was used to extort Jeff Bezos. Let's take a quick look now at how it's all unfolded.
When Mohammed bin Salman met Jeff Bezos in 2018, it was meant to be the start of a closer relationship. They exchanged numbers, they sent messages on WhatsApp. But a security report commissioned by Bezos says it was during this exchange that Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman hacked the billionaire's phone, giving him access to private information.
The initial expert who conducted the forensic investigation concluded with medium to high certainty that the source of the hacking was a video file sent to Mr. Bezos through WhatsApp from an account owned by the Crown Prince.
Just a few months later, Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi was murdered in Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul. It's at this point, some experts argue, that Saudi Arabia tried to use the hacked data to extort Bezos and to influence articles in the Washington Post. Some of his private messages and photos were published by an American tabloid newspaper. Bezos issued a statement accusing that paper of politically motivated extortion. He also drew a connection between the publisher's owner and Saudi Arabia. The kingdom, however, denies it all.
The notion that Saudi Arabia or the Crown Prince hacked Jeff Bezos' telephone is ridiculous, and it's absolutely baseless. The Guardian article, it doesn't have any facts in it, nothing is substantiated. The report that it was based on, that was supposed to have been done by a forensics expert, is lacking.
Experts say the report is compelling, but isn't outright proof of Saudi Arabia's guilt. But it's been enough to convince the UN it now wants Washington to investigate.
This kind of behavior, including by the highest level of the government, is absolutely unacceptable, should not be tolerated.
US President Donald Trump has been notably absent from this discussion. He's faced criticism for his failure to criticize Saudi Arabia's killing of Khashoggi. He's also openly called Bezos and the Washington Post a political enemy.
I won't ever confirm or deny whether investigating anything, but you've probably seen from our charges, we'll investigate malicious activity, including if it's sponsored by a nation state. We don't draw a distinction between purely criminal activity and malicious nation state sponsored activity. All of it is a problem if it violates US law.
The reported hack has also raised questions over the vulnerability of the WhatsApp messaging app, a platform reportedly used in conversations between bin Salman and senior White House advisor Jared Kushner. And some are now asking, if Saudi Arabia can hack the world's richest man, then what else is within its reach?
There's the background. Let's introduce the panel for today. In Washington, D.C., we have got Elizabeth Myers, Professor of Law at the American University in Washington, also the former editor-in-chief of Inside Arabia. In Beirut, regular contributor Rami Khouri, a Professor of Journalism at the American University of Beirut. And on Skype from Washington, D.C., Ali Al-Ahmed, the Director of the Institute for Gulf Affairs. Welcome to all of you. Rami Khouri, I will start with you. A bit of background on these two men here, the relationship. What do they have in common? What did they have to offer each other when they met back in 2018?
Mohammed bin Salman has tried very hard to get major leading international figures and corporations, including entertainment figures, business figures, to come to Saudi Arabia, to invest in Saudi Arabia. He wants to lead a major, what he calls a reform effort, an economic restructuring effort inside Saudi Arabia, and he wants this to be validated by people from all over the world. So this was a possibility for him to get one of the most prominent people in the Western world to be a partner or an investor, or at least a friend. And this is something that probably is going to backfire on him, because if his phone was actually used, and probably done by Saud al-Qahtani, who is Mohammed bin Salman's computer hacking expert, another dirty job man, then this is going to be a serious setback, because what you're seeing is all these incredible calls for more investigations, not just by the UN, but also by other groups, and people starting to take measures against Saudi Arabia. For instance, the State Department refused an American contractor the permission to train Saudi intelligence officials. So the Saudis are starting to feel a practical backlash, and therefore the potential that Mohammed bin Salman hoped to get from this kind of relationship is going to actually prove to be very exactly the opposite. It's going to be very detrimental to him.
And can you just remind us quickly, Rami, going back to that time, what was Mohammed bin Salman's reputation sort of like then? Because, I mean, everything is coloured by the Khashoggi case now. This was pre-Khashoggi. And I'm wondering, was he still sort of seen, he being Mohammed Salman, seen as the great or potential great reformer of Saudi Arabia at that time?
A lot of people in the West, including leading journalists and political figures, were totally taken in by Mohammed bin Salman as the great reformer. And to be fair to him, he did make some significant changes within Saudi Arabia. If you think of, women wrestling matches and caramelized popcorn at cinemas, houses where men and women can go together, as a great achievement, and some economic reforms, he did some really serious changes. But this was a moment where much of the Western world thought that he was really a positive, modernizing force. But most people in the Middle East, I think, well, many people, not most, but many people in the Middle East, including myself, were skeptical. We wanted to wait and see what he actually did, because while he was reforming and selling this reform agenda to the world and his people, he was also centralizing all power in the kingdom in his own hands. So he was acting like Saddam Hussein did, or Gaddafi did, or all these Arab tyrants who controlled every lever of power, and he was doing the same thing. So many people in the Middle East wanted to wait and see what he actually did before they judged him.
OK, Elizabeth Myers, let's bring you in from Washington, D.C. You follow Mohammed bin Salman and events in Saudi Arabia quite closely. What's your take on this sort of relationship, regardless of whether there's been a hacking or not? The fact that the head of Amazon and the Washington Post and the effective leader of Saudi Arabia would be forging a closer relationship.
I actually take a different view of the relationship. I really don't think that this latest debacle, which in normal circumstances would cause a rift, is likely to cause a huge rift between Saudi Arabia and the U.S., certainly not with the Trump administration. I think that in the States right now, we are really in the midst of the pre-election. There is very little that appears to assail Trump's standing. And I think this is really not going to be one of those things that he cares about. And therefore, I think it will just be business as usual between Washington and Saudi Arabia.
And actually, if anything, if past record is to go by, Donald Trump tends to side with Saudi Arabia and Mohammed bin Salman, even though it would be and is an American citizen involved.
I think, yes, that's quite significant, especially insofar as we had our own CIA findings on the Khashoggi murder with, intelligence speak of high credibility, meaning that they are pretty certain that the orders came from MBS himself, that did not change anything and has not changed anything. And President Trump has not walked back his support for the Saudis nor his interest in selling arms and other support, for example, for the war in Yemen. So I really don't see any change from this. But it is a very serious thing when, simply because a particular state actor has a lot of money, that state actor can target the richest person in the world who conceivably one would think would have the wherewithal to protect against that sort of thing. I think this is an issue of global security, that the UN's call for an investigation should be initiated by the United States in particular. This is a breach of U.S. law, federal law that governs hacking, and it's very serious.
Ali Al-Ahmed. So Elizabeth says and from what she says there, it is a shocking thing which seems to have happened there, but perhaps, and I'm sure you can give us some perspective here, not surprising. The idea that, well, I mean, we all know that spying goes on. I think countries are quite open about the fact that there's spying going on, but that it extends to hacking in this situation, maybe not that surprising?
It's not surprising. In March of 2018, I received an email from, and the name was Saud al-Qahtani, and it was a hacking email, and I received before and after. So that process of trying to hack people, phones or computers, is nothing new to the Saudis. They've been doing it for a while, and dating back to the Obama administration, they received a contractor who worked for the CIA, based in Virginia, which basically does this cyber warfare. And the license was given by the Obama administration to equip Saudi Arabia with this capacity. So the idea that Saudi Arabia is not doing this, we have evidence to it. We have many people who have been targeted, and the large number of people who are behind bars, who had their Twitter accounts or emails or phones hacked, and they are behind bars. Some of them have died. So this is evidence. The thing is, like Elizabeth said, it is shocking that the United States officials, administration, not only the Trump administration, but the state in general, has not reacted forcefully against hacking the richest man in the United States. And that tells you that if I had done that, if I had hacked or attempted to hack Jeff Bezos' phone, I would be behind bars without bail today. And that tells you that this political class, in many ways, is being bought by foreign governments, including Saudi Arabia.
So is this fear, Ali, is this fear of hacking and concern about it? Because the first thing you said, you talked about an email which you received. Is it something you're conscious of in your communications? I mean, I'm going to guess that you and probably all four of us actually use WhatsApp quite freely and other messaging services. Is it something you're quite conscious of now?
Absolutely. It's on my mind when I received, and I continue to receive emails from people who say, click on this link, and I never do. Even that email that I was in communication with Saud al-Qahtani over Twitter, my Arabic account, and which Twitter killed without notice or anything, and it probably was done on the behest of Saudi Arabia, which Twitter has very good relationship with. So I have been always conscious about this because I have been a target for a long time. So I'm always on my toes about these things. Wow. And I wish that Jamal Khashoggi was, because I wish I had spoken to him about that, because that's what they do. That's their history. And they do not spare anyone, including Mr. Jeff Bezos. So I hope he can lead or support efforts to combat these Saudis attempts to hack or surveil many people, because that's the only hope, because the United States government will not do it. I would say with great confidence that the United States government has been hacked by money coming from Saudi Arabia and other governments to subvert its own laws.
So let's look then at some of the reaction there's been to this. I think it's predictable enough that Saudi Arabia has denied it, just as it did, or certainly denied Mohammed bin Salman's involvement with Jamal Khashoggi. But Rami Khouri, can an investigation actually achieve anything when you just have that flat denial?
It's difficult to carry out an investigation if the person or group or country you want to investigate refuses to comply. We know this from many cases with Israel, for instance, where many UN agencies and other respected international human rights groups have wanted to carry out investigations, and the Israeli government refuses. Therefore, it makes it difficult. But what happens if you do initiate investigations? You start gathering credible information from credible sources. And there are, in fact, one of the interesting things here is there are several cases in the United Kingdom that have just been revealed about Saudi nationals who were hacked or said they were threatened. One guy said he was beaten up by he thinks Saudi agents, and they requested permission from the British government to raise a law case, a suit against the Saudi government in the British courts, and the British courts just agreed they could do that. So we're going to start getting law cases, and these are going to bring out a lot of information. So it could generate greater and greater verifiable facts about what the Saudi government is or is not doing. We have to presume they're innocent until proven guilty. The problem is that when they deny something, they have a track record of lying and cover up with the Khashoggi affair. So you can't take their denials very seriously. So the best thing to do is to get a credible investigation about these issues, because it is going to be a serious problem if powerful countries like Saudi Arabia go around hacking people, and you can get information, then you can blackmail them, you can do other stuff. One report was that the Saudis used their pictures of Bezos to have the National Enquirer do their report. So this has to stop at some point. But Elizabeth is right. The Trump administration is not going to do anything. They're going to support Mohammed bin Salman all the way. But it's other people we should look at, including, for instance, the U.S. Senate and other agencies, international as well as domestic. There was a report that the FBI at one point in the U.S. stopped an attempt by the Saudi government to kidnap a Saudi national from San Diego and take him back home. And the FBI got involved in that and stopped it. So, yes, you have to investigate and do the best you can to get the facts out, and then let the facts speak for themselves.
Well, Elizabeth, should it be, or who should it be, should I say, that conducts any investigation? Obviously, the United Nations has spoken up already. We heard Agnes Callamard speaking before. But, I mean, I always think of the UN as something which investigates or which mediates between countries, between states here. Here, you've got a state actor, definitely, but Jeff Bezos is still a private citizen.
Well, I think that the investigation probably should be with the U.S. in the first instance. And to the extent that I totally agree with Rami about compiling the evidence as best one can, even though the state actor refuses to acknowledge or comply with any requests for information or even assertion of jurisdiction. And then if once the investigation uncovers more evidence, then the consequences can be economic, because it seems to me that with Mohammed bin Salman's Vision 2030 efforts and incredible efforts to have investment in the kingdom, that if the investigation uncovers credible information that it was at his command, request, his purchase of Israeli spy software and working with Israeli companies to do this, then there should be economic consequences by the market, by investors, by not agreeing to invest in a country that so blatantly contravenes both international law and domestic U.S. law in such a way. And unfortunately, what happens here, just as with Khashoggi, they attempt to have this plausible deniability scenario where, with the Khashoggi case, it was said that it was not the Crown Prince who ordered this. It was some rogue team of 15 operatives who did this. But the evidence has mounted. We have CIA evidence against that. We have a UN special rapporteur, which has found otherwise. And I think we will find the same thing here, that as the evidence mounts, there will be and should be culpability. And if one cannot do it legally, one must do it internationally and economically.
Ali, do you see any signs of change there? As Elizabeth and Rami have both pointed out already, the United States, certainly under Donald Trump, isn't going to change its relationship with Saudi Arabia or Mohammed bin Salman. But as we keep pointing out, when something high profile like this happens to the world's richest man, as we keep saying, is that maybe something which would make people sit up even more if the murder of Jamal Khashoggi didn't?
The Yemen disaster, killing Jamal Khashoggi and other crimes that have been committed by the Saudi government, Mohammed bin Salman in particular, has not changed it. In international politics, in American domestic politics, it really has to take, it takes the power to decide. And let's say if Mr. Jeff Bezos, even with the Trump administration, decided that he will invest in an effort to bring these issues to the Senate and to the political scene, it will happen. I think he has enough money to do it, and I wish and I hope he will, because that's the only way. People talk about the Trump administration as something unique in terms of its relationship with Saudi Arabia. This would have happened with other administration in a different way, but it would have been the same, because there is no alternative voice or power that's advocating for something else. This will continue with other administrations. So that's why I think right now the ball is in Jeff Bezos' court. If he wants to do this for basically revenge or personal issue, he can do it. He has enough money to do it, and let's hope he can bring some support to these issues.
Isn't it amazing? This is just a general thought for all of us, but maybe Rami, I'll start with you. Isn't it amazing that we're even talking about this and that we know that the world's richest man and this influential Saudi leader were even communicating by WhatsApp? When I think about communications between big actors, you think, well, secret lines, secure lines, White House, all these sorts of things. Rami, the fact that we even know they're communicating on WhatsApp, and I think you mentioned it as well, Jared Kushner as well, White House senior advisor, we know of his WhatsApping as well.
Well, even Trump is probably WhatsApping. What comes into play here is the ego factor. These are people who have huge amounts of power. When you're talking of Trump, Kushner, Mohammed bin Salman, and Jeff Bezos, you're talking about 4 of the 10 most powerful people in the entire world, in the entire history of humankind. And these men have huge power, and it goes to their head. They think they can do anything. They can break the law doesn't apply to them. They can invite anybody to be their friend. So the ego factor kicks in, and caution and the rule of law and basic decency get thrown out the window in many cases. And the real problem here, besides the specifics of this case, the WhatsApp and Bezos and Mohammed bin Salman and other things that the Saudis have been accused of, the real problem is that this is expanding all across the Arab world and other countries in the world. But in the Arab world, we have a real serious problem of state surveillance of not just dissidents, but ordinary people. And today, literally today, January 25, in Egypt, the anniversary of the uprising there, the police are stopping anybody on the street to look at their phones, check who are their friends and what they said on Facebook and whatever. So this surveillance, intrusive culture is really a big problem, and it results in many thousands of people in jail.
Rami, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to leave the final word, 60 seconds left, with Elizabeth. I wonder if this actually comes down more to access than technology. World leaders giving out their WhatsApp numbers, and they give up a certain level of privacy that way.
Well, I think that it's so prevalent as a means of communication, but I think one of the big issues right now is how easy it is to do it. It used to be that you would have to click on a link to actually have something downloaded to your phone and therefore all your data wiped or stolen. Now, you don't have to do anything. And I think this really raises security concerns about how we go forward in this age of global connectivity and how we protect not only our data, but national security issues.
Yep, and the game keeps changing every day, doesn't it? Look, thank you so much to all of you, Elizabeth Myers, Rami Khouri and Ali Al-Ahmed, joining us for Inside Story today. Thank you. And thank you to you as well for watching, wherever you are around the world. Remember, we're online at aljazeera.com if you want to see this or any of our other editions again. You can also join in the discussion at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, also at AJ Inside Story on Twitter. I'm Kamal Santamaria at Kamal AJE if you want to contact me directly. And we will see you again soon for Inside Story. Bye for now.